What is going on, GBA fans? My name is Berk, and today we'll be bringing you the Week 7 of the Pick'em crew for GBA Season 7. And of course, I am not alone. I am joined by Matty Brolick.
What is going on, everybody? You got Matty Brolick here, and I am back alongside Berk for the next week of the Pick'em crew, so I hope you are all excited.
So as you can see on the screen, last week, not as good as Week 5, but, you know, most of us going positive, unfortunately Spastic going 3 and 5, but you see some 7s and 1s, a little bit of 6 and 2 here and there, and of course Matty still in first, but somehow I've jumped up to number 2, and that means that the Pick'em crew hosts are at least the ones that are able to do this the best, so that's why we're hosts, and everyone else is just kind of picking and not really talking much.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see that the Pick'em crew hosts are actually good representatives of the show. Hopefully we can keep it that way, and it's not just been something where we've been getting lucky the whole time. So, yeah, hopefully Berk and I can continue to carry.
I don't know, I feel like I've been lucky. That 8-0 was just complete and total luck.
Yeah, 8-0s don't come around very often.
No, they do not. So, Week 7. The first match of Week 7, we have the Free State Torcats versus the Borussia Adon Fan. And as you can see, everyone's picked Lars, and I'm kind of regretting this pick because I remember from the beginning of the season, Lars was going to have a mental breakdown in this match because there's no way he can win against Mr. Man. So this might have been a bad pick just because how does he fight against Mr. Man? He can't. But I did pick Lars. And a large part of that is I just do like Lars's team matchup. A lot of things on Duncan's team, for one, just don't deal well with Magirna because it's a Magirna. And granted, he does have decent answers to it in things like Torkoal, which, how often do you say Torkoal's the answer? And Venusaur could take some hits, but common counters on the ladder to it, like Alolan Marowak, obviously Magirna can now carry Shadow Ball, so that's not really as good. But I just really like Lars's matchup. They've both been playing pretty well so far this season, but I feel like due to some of the really big offensive threats on Lars's team, I think he will be able to pull out a win this week.
Yeah, I went with the same logic there. I definitely like Lars's matchup here. It looks like he definitely has the offensive power to overwhelm Duncan's team. Lars having a lot more experience and everything like that. I just think that he is probably going to be the favorite to win this match. So hopefully he'll pull through and get us the win. But like I say every week, Duncan's team is pretty scary, and he has shown me that he is definitely a capable battler. So we will see what happens.
So up next, we have the St. Louis Rampardos versus the Tampa Bay Luxrays. So why don't you take this match?
Okay, well, this one, not everyone picked Mono. Blue actually picked Dan. Dan is definitely one of the most surprising coaches in the league. He could beat anybody, but Mono coming off a pretty rough loss to Chimpact. I know there was some hacks involved last week. I do believe that Mono's going to take this game very seriously to make sure that he gets back on track, and just the way Dan has been playing this season, it definitely hasn't been his best so far. So I do think that Mono, with how much of a role he's on, he will win this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Mono had a really, really tough matchup last week, as well as playing in the March Madness, which, congrats to Mono, he did win the entire thing, so, yeah.
Yep.
So I think last week, I didn't think he planned as well as he could have. He was planning, at least 10 different matches, so it's kind of hard to make sure he's playing the best. Plus, it was a really, really tough offensive matchup for him last week. But this week, he's playing against Dan. Dan is kind of struggling this season to make sure that he stays ahead in his division, whereas Mono, despite the loss last week, is still 5-1. He's doing really well, and I feel like Mono's going to be the craftier player because he has a lot of good offensive presence against Dan's team. I can definitely see Mono pulling out the win this week.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So up next, we have the Philadelphia Scizors versus the San Francisco Arcaniners. And as you can see, we're actually very split on this match. That's because we've got two really good coaches going head-to-head against each other. Chim picking up a really big win over Mono last week, and so he's coming with a little bit more momentum than George is. But I still have George picked. I have a lot of confidence in George. I know how good he is, and he's definitely not going to want to go 3-4. I know George is definitely not going to want to go there because I don't think he's ever had a losing record, really, ever going into the GBA this late into the season. He has, I wouldn't say that Chimp has like the overwhelming offensive matchup this week, just because you look at Mew deals decently well with Kieran Black defensively, plus he's got offensive checks and things like Garchomp. Granted, every week we're going to say that Kieran Black, Thundurus, Azumarill, Volcanion, those are all giant offensive pressures, and George is going to have to find a way to deal with them. But knowing George, knowing how good he is, I feel like he will be able to find a way. But I'm very split on this match. They're both very good battlers. They're both very good planners. I can see it going either way, but I am going to go with George and the San Francisco Arcaniners.
Yeah, I'm definitely going with a similar route here, just because I looked at the matchup, and I do think that George has overall a better team matchup. Like Chimpact, like you said, every week has just massive offensive threats that could put a lot of pressure on every single team, but George just has so many different mons that can put in work this week, and different types of strategies and whatnot. And just being in his front office, I saw some of the different ideas being passed around about preparation, and I did like them, and they do seem effective. So I do think George could pull the win this week, but he's going against Chimpact, definitely one of the best coaches in the league, so it's not going to be an easy win if he does manage to pull the win. And I could easily see it going either way because, like I said, Chimpact's a great coach. He's also coming off of a huge win against Mono, so he's definitely the one with the momentum. So this one was really tough to call. I had to look at the matchups. I had to, see what some of George's ideas were in the front office chat just to see which one I wanted to pick. And I do think that George may have a slight edge this week.
So up next we have the Detroit Steelings versus the New Orleans Pelipers, so you can take this one.
Okay, so for this one, I decided to go with the New Orleans Pelipers. I kind of like John's team matchup here, but overall, I've been more impressed with John's playing as of late. He just seems like he's been playing pretty solidly all around and building well. Looking at Crimson's team, he definitely seems to struggle a lot with Tapu Bulu. Like, normally, there are at least one or two mons that can pretty hard check Tapu Bulu on each team. Even though it's so ridiculously strong, one thing that I found by actually using it in the March Madness tournament is that its grassy terrain, like healing your opponent's Pokemon and whatnot, can actually be really counterproductive. And it's a pretty difficult mon to use. But in this matchup, like, he really does not have good switch-ins. Like, bulky Entei or something like that obviously can get hit by Stone Edge and has to deal with Stealth Rocks. Serena isn't necessarily a great switch into Tapu Bulu. He outspeeds things like Magneton naturally, so unless he's Scarfed, he doesn't need to worry too much about that. So that particular really is just a major threat. And like I said, John's been playing pretty well. Even though Crimson has also, I just decided to go with John.
Yeah, so I have also gone with John. I really do like John's team matchup here. Tapu Bulu, as he said, just gigantic threat because Crimson really doesn't have anything that wants to take it on. And then you throw in Infernape, and then Infernape takes care of like everything that Tapu Bulu can't take care of. So overall, it's looking like just a really, really strong matchup for John. Crimson has been playing very well, but then again, John has also been doing well these past few weeks, so I'm going to go with John, the New Orleans Pelicans. And then up next, we have the San Francisco Giants versus the Alola Athletic, and we are also very, very split on this match. Half of us going for the Alola Athletic, half of us going for the San Francisco Giants, and actually Blue locking for the San Francisco Giants. Now, I went with the Alola Athletic, mostly because Geo's been pretty hit or miss this season. I get Callum hasn't been doing amazingly this season either, but Geo, I don't think he's happy with his team at all. And when you're not very happy with your team, you tend not to plan as well with it. In terms of team matchup, I really like Sandrill against Geo's team. If Callum can get rid of the Bronzong, which he has a really good way to get rid of Bronzong in Tyranitar because, Dark Stab, then I see Excadrill doing a lot against the team. But then again, Geo does have ways of dealing with it. I just see it as being a very big win condition at the end. So I feel like if Callum can utilize Sandrill very well, especially Tyranitar, weakening things that might be able to take on Excadrill like Salamence, like the Bronzong, then I can see Callum pulling out a win. I'm still a little bit split. I can see either taking it, but I'm going to go with the Alola Athletic.
Yeah, this one was definitely a really tough one to pick as well. Just because the matchup, like Berk said, I really like the Sand offense against Geo, because if he could pursue the Bronzong or just deal with the Bronzong in some way, which isn't that difficult just because Bronzong is a Pokemon that is always kind of in the thick of the action, you know? It just needs to get in there and take some hits and get whittled down and whatnot. So if that's the case, then Excadrill could really put in a ton of damage, because Geo's best way of playing around it is like double Intimidate and Ferrothorn. So those aren't really the safest ways to play around a Sand Excadrill. So other than that, I just think that the matchup could go either way. Like, Callum does not have great switch-ins to a lot of Geo's Mons. He does have Snorlax for something like Gengar, but other than that, he really doesn't have too much. Tyranitar isn't the safest switch-in. Salamence is a big threat to any team, especially with that Z move. So the matchup could go kind of either way, but Geo has, like you said, been kind of hit or miss. He's definitely been more off the season than on, without a doubt, and I think because of that, because the matchup could definitely go either way, I'm going to go with Callum.
So anyway, up next we have the San Jose Sharpedos versus the San Diego Chim Chargers. Why don't you take this battle?
In this one, I decided to go with the San Diego Chim Chargers. MV has been looking really strong ever since his loss the week 1. And even that loss, you know, he got caught off guard. It wasn't like he did anything necessarily badly. So he's really been coming back quite well. Even though I think Tom may have a slight matchup here, MV's, like I said, he's just been hot. And he's someone who's so hard to stop, especially with his creative type of building, because when he gets really creative, he can really mitigate a rougher matchup. And one thing in particular that definitely looks very threatening is the rain offense here, because even though Tom has a Vaporeon, MV does have things like Omastar, which could potentially get past Vaporeon with maybe like a shell smashing set, or running like a physical set, or then something like Kingdra, same thing, can run a physical set quite effectively. So that type of offense could definitely put a lot of pressure on Tom's offense. So I think it should be an interesting match, but at the same time, Tom does have the Gardevoir, which is a threat, and MV has to be careful around that. So should be an interesting one, but like I said, MV's been hot, and it's kind of hard to vote against him, especially with how creative he gets to play around kind of rough matchups.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with MV after 6 consecutive weeks of picking for Tom. I'm going to go with MV this week. MV is one of the best this season. He's been using his team extraordinarily well, and it's very, very, very hard to pick against him. I know what Tom's bringing against him, and he's got some spicy stuff, especially how to deal with the Alolan Muck, but I think it should be a good battle. Tom's been doing much better this season than he has last season, and I think he can definitely give MV a run for his money. I think Tom can win, but it's just really, really hard to choose against MV this season. Anyway, up next we have the Utah Jasmine versus the Milwaukee Sawsbucks, and just like the first battle, everyone's got the Utah Jasmine picked against Steve, and I think this is with relatively good reason. Despite still Necro being new to the GBA, he's already 1-1, which is doing already a little bit better than Steve. And Steve just hasn't been playing well this season, and I think his team hasn't panned out quite how he thought it was going to be. He hasn't been able to plan very effectively with it, and because of that, he's not doing too well. Whereas Necro, I feel like the team matchup's pretty good to start with. Zapdos as an offensive pressure is just looking really, really nice. So I think Necro should be able to pull out a win this week. Necro has been playing pretty well. In fact, last week he almost did win with Swellow, but just some little nice planning by MV prevented that. But this week, I think Steve is going to go down this week.
For this game, I'm just going to have to go with Gator. Gator's been looking really solid this season, week in and week out. I say it pretty much every week. It's going to be hard to pick against him this point, especially when he's going against Tup, who has not been playing at his best for most of the season. But looking at the matchup, something like Mamoswine really just kind of tears through Tup's team. There's not much he could do because some of his faster Pokemon do get picked off or at least weakened by Ice Shard and whatnot. So that's definitely a massive threat. Other than that, the matchups look somewhat even because Tup just has a pretty threatening team in general. But when the matchups are pretty even and Gator has such a mindless offensive threat like Mamoswine against Tup's team, then it's definitely not going to be easy for Tup to handle all that pressure. Plus the fact that Gator is a fantastic player. He's been doing quite well this entire season. So with that being said, I just pretty much had to go with Gator here.
Yeah, I'm also going to have to go with Gator. And pretty much for the same reasons. I hate saying that Mamoswine is this gigantic offensive threat, because you want to know something? Mamoswine is a huge offensive pressure, but it does almost the same exact thing like every single game, and that's die. So I hate saying that Mamoswine is this huge offensive pressure, but literally it comes in and clicks Ice Shard, which it doesn't need to outspeed anything, it doesn't need to hit anything, just clicks Ice Shard, because Tup's team is now extraordinarily weak to that, especially since he decided to trade away Scizor, because Scizor was his best offensive check to it. It comes in, takes the Ice Crash, takes the Earthquake, and then threatens it out with Bullet Punch. But now, if Gator brings his, I guess, signature Mamoswine in Adamant Life Orb, that is really, really gonna hurt. And I don't think Tup has a lot to deal with that. And if so, it looks like it could put on a lot of offensive pressure. But I've seen Mamoswine used, and it does the same thing. It dies. So I'm not holding my breath to see that Mamoswine do things. So anyway, that is going to wrap up the Week 7 Pick and Crew for GBA Season 7. As always, please leave your picks down in the comment section below, as well as your locks of the week. Tell us why you picked, for who you picked, and also why you locked against the person that you locked against. Anything less to say, Matty?
Not really. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like Berk said, just continue to pick with us week in and week out. It definitely makes our job doing this a lot more entertaining and enjoyable. And yeah, just get ready for some more exciting games like every single week. And until then, we'll see you next time.
See ya.